Greetings, humans. We've got something very serious to talk about today, and that is if you're trying to quit drinking or you're newly sober, is that one of the most magical ways to go about this is to separate from your cravings, right? But how does one actually go about separating from the cravings? What does that even mean? I mean, the cravings are inside your head. They're part of you. They're a part of your existence, and they're happening for a reason. Is because life sucks so bad that the only way to escape is alcohol, right? I mean, that's the way my life was for from the ages of 35 when I became a full-blown alcoholic to the ages of 43, where I relapsed 16 times, going and every single time I relapsed, it was hardcore, like 24/7 vodka as soon as I relapsed. And I had to, by the end, I had to check myself into a detox center by 2 weeks because I was on the verge of death every time. In the beginning, when I was 35, I could handle it for a couple months. I mean, prior to that, I'd be drinking a lot, but that flip hadn't been switched where I became a true alcoholic. And before that, I didn't even know that that was a thing. Like I thought, oh, those people that are true alcoholics, they're just weak-willed. It turned out there is something so powerful with for an alcoholic that it becomes so hard to fight against yourself when the cravings become so intense and life without alcohol becomes so miserable and so dissatisfaction. There's no amount of willpower that can overcome it. And for those of you who haven't been there, you don't know. You can't ever really understand that. But I have. And it wasn't until uh, age 43, I'd done so much work. I'd done a lot of work in spirituality. I mean, before I went in, I was an atheist. I didn't believe in a God, my understanding, but I had to do a lot of work there, trying to find the answer. And 12 steps pushes you towards finding a God, a higher power of your understanding. And so I did work there, but that thing, that God of my understanding, which I finally came to understand, some sort of God, never came in, made a direct connection, and took away these cravings for me. If you do have that sort of thing, like that would be a way to separate from your cravings. If you believe that, if you're already like when you were growing up, if you had a faith-based childhood and you believe in a God and that you have a direct connection, a direct line of communication with this God, then that is a very decent path for you to separate from your cravings. But if you don't, you've never had before, I'm going to tell you the chances are really likely. I mean, AA works. Um, I saw a statistic 8% of the time. So if you keep going in and thinking this time you'll get it right, because it's someplace in the book it says, those do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program, usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. That's bullshit. It doesn't work for a ton of people, and it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean you're a piece of shit. It doesn't mean you're constitutionally incapable of being honest with yourselves. It just means that you're not going to make that communication, that direct line of communication with God. And for those people that are in the program and I mean, so many of us would just go and talk and say, I kind of like the community, but this God thing isn't working for me. If that God thing isn't working for you, the program's not going to work for you because the community is not going to keep you sober on those really rough nights. So how do we go about then separating from our cravings? Because we know I've talked about the cravings are just too damn powerful. They will take over and eventually convince you and manipulate you and connive you into figuring out a way to leap on you the second you have a moment of weakness and make you go get that drink. Okay, so let me show you how I went about it. And it was like freaking mind blowing when I figured it out. And that was 8 years ago. And I've never even, like, the cravings have never come close to capturing, getting at me anymore. And that's because I separate. But let me show you how I separated from the cravings. And this was after a lot of work doing, I'm studied as an engineer and I've done a lot of work uh, taking what the scientists make and kind of making something that humans can use from it. And that's what I've done. I'm not, no, this is not a scientific plan. It's a rational, logic-based plan based on the science, but you don't have to understand the science because that's where a lot of us get stuck. It's like the spiritual approach isn't working for us, and the scientific approach isn't working for us because the scientific approach is too damn sciency and the spiritual approach is too damn spiritually. So what I've done is created an approach where we're using science but making it simple for us normal humanoids that just don't, don't understand what all these millions of scientific terms, how they relate and what the hell it's going to do for us. So I wanted an easier way for us to think about that. Okay, enough rambling. Let me get to you, and I'll show you how simple it basically becomes. So here is a picture of me, the inside of my brain. Okay, and I want you to envision this as the inside of your brain because if you're an alcoholic and struggling with drinking, you probably know this. It's like as we kind of grow up, from 0 to the ages 10, whatever, or it's just kind of our default mode where we think all of the thoughts and the emotions and the behaviors that we carry out are our own, right? Because they're in our head. Anything that comes from our head, from our brain, is who we are, is what we are. And so all of our emotions, and no matter how toxic they get, all of our thoughts, no matter how toxic they get, are ours. Okay? And that's what was happening to me, except I had two totally contradictory voices going on in my head. It was me and my crazy. In this case, this is a video about our cravings, so I'm going to call it me and my cravings. Over here, I won't even talk about the toxic thoughts. I'll just talk about the toxic emotions. I mean, well, it's kind of, cravings are kind of like a mix between thoughts and emotions. They make you feel like crap, and then they make you just say, go get this, go get this, go get this, in some sort of twisted way to make you feel like that's the only way out. So I was over here saying, no, I'm never going to drink again. I'm good with life as it is. I know that if I have a drink, I'll end up in a loony bin in 2 weeks. No frickin' way I'm ever going to do that. And then my crazy over here was screaming, you're a piece of crap. Go get a drink. Drink, 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 drink. It was like a 16-year-old boy thinking about sex. And if you've been a 16-year-old boy thinking about sex, you know what I mean. It's like, and you, you can't get it, or at least if you were me, when I was 16, I couldn't get it. But I wouldn't stop my brain from going, sex, 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 sex. And I know, I mean, that's just nature. That's biological. Something had gotten imprinted in me that the need, just as we have that reproductive need that's so strong once we start going through puberty, we have this instinctual need to survive. And there is a reason why the instinctual core, well, this other voice that's screaming, drink, 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 it thinks it's actually saving our life. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That's a little teaser for what's coming up. So that day when at 43, it was on February 25th, 2017, when I finally when I had my last drink. But just a few weeks later, on March 14th, 2017, I was starting to spiral downward again. And I was sitting above, I remember it so clearly. I was sitting above a laundry basket and I was like, I'm a piece of shit. I need a drink. Uh, my life sucks. I need a drink. I've got 3 kids now. There's no way I can ever possibly take care of these things these wonderful little precious creatures that I love so much. I can't take care of myself. How am I going to take care of them? I need a drink. I'm not good enough. I need a drink. The world is scary. I need a drink. People hate me. I need a drink. And it was just like all this terrible, toxic thoughts that I was yelling at myself. And at the same time, I was yelling that the only solution is to drink. Over here, I'm thinking, having a drink will kill me. Over here, it says, you need a drink to save you, right? That was my crazy. And that involved where all the cravings will come from. And then I realized, and it was that moment that it hit me. It's like, what the fuck is all this nonsense screaming around in my head for? I didn't put the addiction there. I didn't put the negative thoughts. I didn't believe I was a piece of shit. I didn't believe I wasn't good enough. I didn't believe people hated me. But that little part of me was getting smaller and smaller, and the rest of my brain was getting filled up with all that toxic shit. And every time it started to scream, I would give it that reward, that alcohol that it wanted. So it knew that if it kept on getting louder and louder and louder, it would eventually get what it wants. So it never shut up. So how do we separate from our crazy? Our crazy and our cravings? What does that even mean? Well, I mean, I'm not even going to go into the AA approach. The AA approach is you wouldn't be here if the 12-step approach worked for you. So basically, but the first step is we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. It's basically like saying, you and your crazy suck. Turn over the keys. You can't handle this. Get a new boss, and that boss is God. And if you can't make a connection with God, you're fucked. Okay, so let's move on to one of the more successful approaches that started well back in the early 1900s, cognitive behavioral therapy. And their approach is to say, hey, you're not all the thoughts. You're not all those distorted thoughts. You're not all those distorted emotions. They are separate from you, right? And so I went to a therapist, and I didn't understand the CBT. I was being therapized upon with the CBT, and we made some common bonds, but I didn't know the approach myself. The therapist was kind of etching it out of me 1 hour a week, but I was going crazy the other 24 times 7 minus 1 hours of that week, going crazy with these with my crazy, and it was still screaming, and I would never make it more than 6 months. 1 hour per week is fantastic. If you're not in the situation that I was in, but I was in that situation. 1 hour per week ain't gonna do nothing. It takes about 6 months to make progress in CBT. I was drunk within usually less than 4 months. I never made it 6 months over an 8-year period. So, but they were onto something. They're like, hey, all your thoughts, all these things, they're distorted. They're way out of whack, and we're gonna teach you to see how they're way out of whack. But I couldn't figure it out for myself because I couldn't figure out, why is my brain so not in sync with what I wanted. And that's when I came upon the first inklings of a new solution called the IC solution, where I'm going to show you that you can actually completely separate and see the logic of why your brain is doing that. Like, so if I was able to fundamentally understand why my brain was telling me all these damn lies, then I would be able to figure out when the lies were happening. And that's when I came up with March 14th, 2017. I came up with the first inklings of the IC solution approach. And this is where we start to look at ourselves in a totally different perspective. Where before you saw where you are all the thoughts. You're just that one brain. You're all the thoughts. You're all the emotions. You're all the crazy, and you're all the crazy behaviors that crazy carries out, right? But this is what's called the IC solution approach. And that's where you are simply your consciousness with your conscious brain. And what I mean by those two things, the consciousness is basically the thing that knows that you're the one that's seated inside of your body. The thing that we all have probably seen the movie Avatar. If you've not, if you haven't, you should. It's Jake Sully, the warrior's brain, gets plugged into the Avatar, the Navi's brain, so he can go out and find another world. That's what's getting switched, is the consciousness. That's how you can think about it. But from those B movies from the 80s where one person wakes up when their brain is in their daughters or something like that. That's the consciousness. So you're not your thoughts. You're not your emotions. You're not your body. You're not your job. You're not your name. You're just that awareness that you know that you're inside your head. That's the consciousness. And the only thing you have that you're capable to control is that conscious brain, the one that the consciousness directly controls. Okay? So then that's you. That's you up here, just that. But then you've got this massive, powerful, fast subconscious brain. And the term subconscious brain has been changed a lot over 200 years since the whole psychology started. So I want to just kind of straighten that out. What do I mean by when I say subconscious brain? I mean more of the system one brain that's explained in behavioral economics. I mean the brain that's kind of running our show 90% of the time when we're kind of running on autopilot, which is scary, but it's true. That fast brain that kind of does things automatically is literally running our show 90% of the time. And that's what I'm referring to when I say the subconscious brain. And if that is not filled with the ideas that you put there and the things that you want to do, and rather if it's filled with a whole bunch of things like I'm an addict, we need alcohol, or you're a piece of shit, you're going to start to believe it, even though you're not a piece of shit and you don't need alcohol. Alcohol is killing us. Okay, so what does put it there? And that's when I came up with the IC, the instinctual core. I didn't want to call this a separate brain. We all know, I mean, it's very scientifically proven that we have this, but that we have a bunch of instincts and that we have this subconscious brain. But I wanted to categorize it rather than what the instinctual core is, the IC is. It's a culmination of all of our instincts, all of our survival instincts that are there for the sole purpose of our survival. And it can make use of this system one brain, of this subconscious brain. So before your consciousness even arrives on the show, starts an inkling of it around two and kind of fully forming and kind of you kind of get like your first like, oh, okay, I'm a person on this planet around six, but it doesn't fully form until 24. This instinctual core is running the entire show. Your whole thing is like when you drop out of the womb and you start crying. I'm like, hey, you're like, hey, what's this new environment? Do you remember being there? Do you remember crying? Do you remember saying, uh, uh, looking for food and whatnot? There was something else running the show. That was the instinctual core. But it doesn't hand over the keys when your consciousness arrives on the scene, and because you've got enough of that conscious brain machinery finally developed, which doesn't fully develop until you're 24. It keeps whatever it's already put in your subconscious. And that's childhood trauma. It's not that you were traumatized, it's just that this instinctual core had to deal with the problems it was facing in a certain way. And it put all that and filled up your subconscious with all that stuff. So, but what does that have to do with drinking and cravings? Well, for me, I don't know what happened to me. But ever since I can remember, like my first memories, I was totally an anxious, freaked out, little panicked kid. Scared shitless. Like I remember the first day of school was one of my first memories when I was holding on to that door. Don't leave me here, Mom. This tribe of people ain't my tribe and they're gonna kill me. So, but now I see it, it's like that makes total sense because that was kind of my first introduction to people. My family was really isolated and we didn't talk about emotions or whatnot. We just kind of went about our business. But then to be dropped off at this place outside in this new tribe, the instinctual core said, these things are strangers. These things are outside of your tribe. You just can't leave. The only thing that you know is your tribe and be left here because you will die. Because 30,000 years ago, if you were all of a sudden put in this new tribe that's not your tribe, you're most likely going to die. And that's what the instinctual core is doing. It's like the all those survival instincts that we have did not do not make sense for this world. They make sense for a prehistoric world, a world where our tribe was no more than 100 people, a world where our entire world was about 100 square miles. A world where there were real threats, like if you all of a sudden lost your tribe or got dropped in the middle of another tribe, or there was a sudden, or you're just away from your tribe, you could be eaten by a bear or knocked out by another tribe or just lost. And if you were by yourself, you're dead. So this thing, sorry about that. Um, so this thing is really trying hard to help us survive, but it's not the way it works here. Today, our tribe is 8 billion people. Today, our globe, our area is not 100 square miles. It's globe. It's Earth, right? And not that not even if we don't travel, we see things that are all the threats happening all over the world. And it's instinctual core. Of course, it's freaked out. It's not used to this. It hasn't adapted. It hasn't changed for this environment. Okay, so what about the alcohol? I mean, how does that come into the picture? I'm just talking about how fucked up I was, how scared, how anxious, how I had this high level of discomfort. Well, alcohol wasn't made for us. It basically just hot wires the system. It just short circuits the system, and all of a sudden it tells me, "Don't worry, you're safe now. You've made it to the top of the pecking order. Everything's good. There are no threats." And so it's like an absolute lie. Like, yes, it makes you feel good, right? And so I am all for it when if you're able to go out and party drinking alcohol, but I wasn't doing that anymore. I wasn't partying anymore. I was drinking it specifically because I had a need to escape what my instinctual core thought was an insane world. Now, what does this have to do with anything? It was that when I started to figure out, when I saw this picture in my head, and it wasn't like this exactly. I've been working on it forever, trying to refine it to make it as simple as frickin' possible so that we can all understand it as quickly as possible. All of a sudden, I saw like, oh, my brain is all fucked up for a reason. It's got this thing, and we talk about it in punchlines at the bars, like, hey, well, I had to do it. I was instinctually driven. No, it's much deeper than that. It's messing us up in so many different ways. And as soon as we see that, everything that is in our subconscious, what we think says our beliefs and our actions and our thoughts is up for question, could potentially be total bullshit and put there for the wrong reason to help us survive. And it's not helping us survive in this world at all. So as soon as you make, so the approach with the IC solution is to say, hey, I'm not anything in my subconscious. I'm just up here floating around in my conscious mind, and I've got some ideas. And then the only thing real becomes your overriding decision. And then I made this overriding decision, no matter what, I'm not drinking again. And then I realized there was this little puppy inside my head. We treat, with the IC solution, you treat the IC, the instinctual core, like it's a soldier or a puppy or a little kid who's just lost his way, but it wants your survival. You just have to retrain it, right? So I started seeing that all the fear that it was sending me, the fear that I was not capable, that everyone hated me, the fear that I wasn't good enough, were all a bunch of fucking lies. And I could go out and test for myself. And in fact, it became like, my brain became like, I wouldn't say a battleground where I was fighting the instinctual core. It became like a playground where I was training a little kid or a little puppy. It's like, an example I use a lot is like, um, I had this wonderful dog, and the dog would always bark because I knew that little Peavy knew that if she kept on barking, I would let her jump on the bed and sleep in my bed with me. And I wouldn't sleep at all. It was terrible sleep, but yet I did that for like 12 years. Okay, so one day I'm like, God darn it, Peavy, I gotta sleep. You can't come up here. And just for 3 nights, instead of letting her in my room, I just put her down on the main level where she would have her bed to sleep in. And she would sit down at the bottom for 3 nights and bark for about, first night for about an hour, second night for about 30 minutes, third night for about 5 minutes, and fourth night she's like, I guess this is my new bed. That is what we're doing. When we separate from the instinctual core, we let the instinctual core, you're wrong. Alcohol does, you're not protecting me by making me drink alcohol. You're not protecting me by sending me a whole bunch of fear. You're not protecting me by sending me a whole bunch of cravings. Okay, so I think you get the point. I've really belabored it a long time, but I'm already at 23 minutes and I apologize. But if this is hitting you, this just might be the key to save your life. It's not only about changing alcoholism. After I got rid of the alcohol, I changed every single facet of my life. So let me show you like how I break this down. And it's like, this is what I've worked, again, it's simple in the end, but I've worked forever to try and make this a simple thing for us. And so prior to me having this, well, kind of instant realization that took me 8 years to manifest into something that everyone could use, I developed, this is what I call the instinctual core user's guide. And before, so right now, this is me, right? This perspective before, when everything inside my head, all my reactions, all my thoughts, all my cravings, all my emotions, they were all my own. And boom, these guys would just, where are you, little buttons? Uh, Fear would come up. I'd get angry and think it's my own. I'd feel hate and sadness, stress, cravings, demands, judgments. And as a human, we're able to make demands and judgments, but it's not those snap demands like jump out of the way of that frisbee, swat the bug, or I'm a piece of shit. Don't do it. So I realized that's the world I was living in. And I was trying to escape all that shit. And the only way to do it, of course, was pleasure. alcohol, right? But then when I took on this new perspective, boom, and I built the user's guide. Let me show you one more thing. Um, Here, when I was living in this world where all of this stuff was my own, and let's say, my main focus was the demands, the judgments that I wasn't good enough, the demands that to run away from this situation, and the fear that came along with it, and then cravings, and eventually there were so many different demands for me to run that stress started to compile, and then sadness set in because I was such a miserable piece of shit that would always drink myself to death. And the cravings would be like boom, 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 and when they're all my own, if you stay above this max level for too long, willpower gives out. Boom, go get a drink, move to pleasure, and even though it's going to kill me, I had to move there, and I had to get that alcohol. Boom, and I was able to drop it down. That was the only way. Alcohol. Okay. Now let me show you the new world with the perspective switch. No longer are we working on a single meter where we've got to resist. We got to resist ourselves because all the emotions are ours. Now we're working on a double meter, right? Where we're like okay with life, but there's this thing inside of us barking, hey, fear, be afraid of this. Like, let me talk about like belonging, like when, no, the pecking order. When I was dropped off in fifth grade, no, a funnier story, when I was dropped off in first grade to do a play where I had to get on stage and say "Ba Ba Black Sheep" to a crowd of 100 frickin' people. And there was these two girls that went ahead of me, Tracy and Kelly. They were twins, and they were like giggling and laughing. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you people? You're about to go on stage. That you're gonna die. I thought there's that instinctual core inside of me that said if I got up on stage and got out of my position in the pecking order and made a fool of myself, I was dead. And that's the way it really thought. Because back then in the days, if you went out of your position in the tribal pecking order and tried to make some formal grandstand going against everyone else, make a fool of yourself, you're ousted, you're fucking dead. That's what it was saying to me. It's saying don't get on that stage because you're gonna die. Okay, so, but these girls in front of me didn't have the instinctual core that I did. So I was freaking out. And there was these demands, do not get up there. Do not. And I was scared shitless. And the judgment was, you're not good enough. Don't jump out of your place in the pecking order. Stay in line. Stay in line. And then the demands got so strong, run away. And then I was like getting called. And I remember like, okay, next up will be Roger Anderson. Of course, they pronounced my name wrong. It's Roger Andresen, but whatever. For a rendition of Ba Ba Black Sheep. And as soon as I heard that, I went from backstage to running out of the auditorium to running out of the playground to running across the playground, across our entire field, jumping over a rickety fence, swimming across a canal, running another half mile home, hiding in my bedroom closet where I was safe and not to be found for 5 hours when a whole bunch of people were looking for me. Okay, so what was going on? The pecking order, these are the inputs of the activation filter. And so the activation filter is everything that's coming through our senses, through sight, sound, hearing, sound and hearing be the same, taste, um, all those other ones. I'm sorry, I'm still laughing at myself. But not only that, thoughts of the future, what'll potentially happen. And so this thought kept on going through my head, like if I get up there, I'm gonna die. So it was screaming, all you gotta do, buddy, is go run and escape. Because, all right, so I'm sorry, let me step back. The activation, this is all the thoughts coming through. And because the instinctual core uses that system one brain, uses that subconscious brain, it acts a lot quicker. But it's not only looking for the immediate threats, like being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. It's looking for threats on the physiological level, like are we getting our food, are we getting our air, are we getting our water, safety, do we have a place to sleep tonight? But now all of it, you can probably tell how that goes way out of whack. Instead of just looking for a place to sleep tonight, it now compares ourselves to other people in the tribe and sees billionaires in the tribe and says, no matter how much money you have, you're a piece of shit because you're not a billionaire. Unless you are. Congratulations. But Elon Musk has like 70 or 100 some 400 times more than you, so you're still a piece of shit. Um, Way to go, Elon. Good job. Make us all feel like shit. Either way, point is, I wasn't a scared little kid. I was hijacked. I was a hijacked little kid by a very powerful instinctual core telling me to get the hell out of there. And then, but I still lived in the same discomfort. So finally, when I realized that this scenario was happening, I'm like, holy shit, I don't have to listen to it anymore. It's wrong. I can get up on a stage and say Baba Black Sheep and I can make a total ass of myself and everyone could laugh at me and I won't die. In fact, right now, because I've separated, I can do that. I can get up on, I can talk to this camera. I love to be laughed at. I love to make a fool out of myself. That's one of my favorite things to do. And that's what I loved about drinking because I was able to do that. But with drinking, what that did was jump me to the top of the pecking order. Now, I don't give a shit about the pecking order. I'm not at the bottom, I'm not at the top. Anyone I'm seeing is just another human and we're same. I don't care how beautiful they are or rich or strong or powerful or all that stuff. I just dropped it. And now I just go to up to anyone just feeling totally comfortable. And you know what's so weird? They feel comfortable with me when I feel comfortable with them. So that thing inside of me that said, be afraid, stop being afraid. And it's all of a sudden that thing that said, you got to get that alcohol because we're afraid of everything, stop coming too. But either way, in the beginning, that thing would still yell for the alcohol. But I'm just like, hey, I see you yelling for the alcohol, and I know what you want. You want to try and save my life to escape this problem, but you're not going to get it. And like that puppy, it stopped in literally like 3 days. I mean, still, here we are 9 years later, and every once in a while I'll have a dream or a thought about alcohol, but it's instantly overridden. It's like it was such a freaking breakthrough for me that, not only was my head filled with these distorted thoughts, there was a reason behind all the distorted thoughts. Okay, so then, okay, so when this little puppy is screaming, come on, get a drink, get a drink, get a drink, you just say, hey, that's like a little puppy trying to run across the street. No, I'm not gonna let you die. I'm not gonna let me die. And eventually the little puppy stops screaming, brings it back. But he can go ahead and scream all he wants because you know it's not you. And it's not gonna let you go above the level. That's why you can sit there with the total chaos of the mind, but you sit above it and say, hey, little instinctual core is doing its thing again, but he's not getting up on the bed today. Okay, now, just a little quick, not only with the instinctual core solution do you get to figure out all the crazy that's happening inside you and separate from it, but then who's going to run the show since we're not letting the instinctual core running the show? Then we move on to talk about how you get to start doing it. And you can live a life that's just insanely more productive, where you're taking part in all the activities of life by living on these layers here. And when you start to live in these layers, the human layers of intrigue, appreciation, engagement, self improvement, and purpose, all of a sudden, you're fulfilling all the needs down here better than the instinctual core ever did when it was trying to force you to fulfill those needs. You're starting to fulfill those needs, getting more money, getting more rewards, and not giving a shit nearly as much and getting out of the stress. And that's just because you start engaging in life and you become so much more productive, so much more creative, so much more intrigued. And it's just like all life changes for the better. So we learn that the instinctual core is full of shit. It's trying to save our life. And then you start to learn how to start to run your own life. That's the core principle behind the instinctual core. That's how I separated from my cravings. If you don't want to do it this way, figure out a way how to separate from your cravings. And if that's letting God come in and do it for you, that is fantastic. If that's working with a therapist, a lot, and letting the therapist help you separate from cravings, that's fantastic. But if this resonates with you, like this video, subscribe. I've got a whole bunch more like it, but also come to instinctcenter.com because it is totally free for the world. And I've spent a lot of time setting it up so that we can all work together in meetings. I am not your therapist. I am not, I don't need any money. We just all come together in meetings, and I teach you how to use this. We teach each other how to use this. As I inspect my instinctual core, you can start to inspect your instinctual core. And when we're working together as fellow investigators, we can all get better together and we can all hold each other accountable. So come to the Instinct Center, instinctcenter.com, subscribe, like, do all that stuff. In the meantime, I would love to get to meet you. Love you. Peace out. Adios. And I am not going to go back and edit this because I've got too much information to share for you. So I hope you enjoyed my low quality video with high content information that could just save your life. And with that, I'm going to press this stop button now. Goodbye.